you...
Maybe. I might have to disagree with you.
I don't know what it's like to sleep with a woman, by the way, so I don't know what it's like, but you must be able to teach me.
I think that leading with physical compliments, especially with a beautiful woman, doesn't get you very far in pickup.
But I think not with pickup, but with intimacy. Not with pickup.
So you've already successfully seduced this woman and you're in a relationship with her? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, in bed. Outside of the bedroom, she gets compliments all day, every day. In that vulnerable position, she actually doesn't know where she stands. She actually doesn't know. So you're almost starting from scratch. And the more you can, make her feel comfortable, the better it'll be. You don't need to over-worry.
You should definitely try to treat your partner better over time, for sure.
But over-complimenting a beautiful woman is useless. It doesn't work at all. If actually, it makes you very boring as a man. Over-complimenting.
No, there's a time and a place for every comment. Yes, those are good points. Who do you think is more naive, men or women?
By far, men. What would you say?
Probably men. Yeah, but I heard you talk about this on your last interview with Mark, and you talked about how deluded men were when they believe that the 22-year-old has actually fallen in love with them and not their 70-year-old money, et cetera, et cetera. And that certainly can be the case. Yeah. I think that men are more romantic than women in general, but I do think that women can be naive as well.
They can be, but the thing is they'll be surrounded by friends that will kind of teach them the truth. They'll be surrounded by content creators that teach them the truth. They'll be surrounded with...
What content creators are teaching women the truth?
Well, only the ones that will say men are trash and men are this, so the negative kind of ones.
But men aren't all trash.
I know.
So that's not the truth.
That's also not the truth, I understand. But they kind of...
That's just making women feel right in that moment. And they go to that content creator because they've been hurt by a man, and it's easier for them to collectively denigrate the man's feelings than to potentially look at why did this outcome happen? Like, what part of this are you responsible for?
But even little things, like I find that women, like for example, if a man starts following a new girl online, most women will be alert to that. They'll be like, why are you following this? Who's this girl? Or you're liking this picture. Most women will be alert to that. Women will be following brand new men or posting provocatively, and the men almost don't feel like they can say anything, or they don't even think anything of it. So our mind goes to, look, I would always say that the hotter the girl, the less naive she is. Unattractive people, men and women, are naive. And I think that's a better question. Rather than gender, I think unattractive people are naive, attractive people are not naive. And the reason being is attractive people get to see what human behavior is like when they're sexually attracted to you. So an attractive man will see that a woman will leave her husband and come to you in the middle of the night and say, okay, I'm going to be late, and she'll lie in your bed. An attractive woman will see that a man will post pictures of his wife as a WhatsApp picture and still be messaging her all day, every day, and begging her to spend time with him. The more attractive you are, the less naive you are, because you see what people act like when they want you. Unattractive people think, oh, I know she went to his house at 12 a.m., but she would never do that because she doesn't do that with you. She can sit next to you at 12 a.m. and nothing will happen.
Well, have you heard about that guy who's divorcing his wife after the Drake concert? Have you heard that?
Was it Usher concert?
Oh, it was Usher.
It was Usher,
yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Because apparently this woman wouldn't even hold hands with him in public. She was very... demure, and Usher invited this woman up on stage, and she's
fed her
licking
grapes.
cherries and staring at her with this unabashed desire, and the guy
she wouldn't hold her husband's hand.
Wouldn't hold her husband's hand. And that's the problem. The more attractive you are, the more you get privy into an insight into human behavior when they want you. The less attractive is that you think people talk on the phone all day, every day without it crossing lines. So you think people hang out late at night and it doesn't cross any lines because no one crosses lines with you. But in the real world, attractive people cross lines.
Yeah, there's this old joke in Buddhism that's basically like, enlightenment, better not start. Having started, better finish.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes it's best to just, it's kind of like a bell curve. Let's say that you grew up in some small town, and then you go to like Cleveland, Ohio, and you're like, wow, it's Cleveland. There's so many things here. It's like, this is the place for me. And maybe it is, but maybe you shouldn't travel anywhere else. To actually understand how Cleveland exists in the scheme of things, you might have to travel to hundreds of cities and hundreds of countries, and then you see what Cleveland is good and bad for. So sometimes it's best for people to stop really early because they can be impressed by Cleveland. But if you don't do that, you might as well be a world traveler so you actually understand what the world is like. But it's the people who get trapped in the middle, and that's the vast majority of people, that are often dissatisfied.
And I don't actually think being non-naive is a virtue, like somebody who knows it quite well. The only good thing I find from knowing kind of the opposite sex quite well is that everything is predictable. I know that if you stop having intimacy with your husband, he's going to cheat. Unless he's got no testosterone, he's going to cheat. So you run the risks knowing what the outcomes are. So the good thing is you can make informed decisions, but it doesn't actually contribute to a much happier life in any way, shape or form. So maybe there's beauty in naivety. Maybe you'll get 10, 20, even beautiful kids with somebody that you didn't know what they were up to, and then the outcome is still you get beautiful kids and you get a good, long-lasting marriage for a couple of years. Mm.
We make such a big deal about the differences between men and women, but it's almost like what you just said, where the very attractive almost live in this stratosphere that's very, very different than the rest of us.
Yeah, different world. They pull out different reactions from people. They also don't understand, like one of the things that attractive women will say to unattractive women, be like, what? Don't settle for less. What are you talking about? If he didn't take you to a nice restaurant, that means he doesn't want you. And it's like, but then that's the most she can extract out of a man. Why would you put your beautiful standards on this average looking woman? Or if it's like, don't settle, ladies, you're somebody else's dream girl. No, some women are nobody's dream girl. They're somebody's wife, but they're not any man's dream girl because they don't look like Pamela Anderson, they don't look like Megan Fox. So not every girl is somebody's dream girl.
It's just such a hard thing to sell to women because it's...
But it's the reality. Well, like, I'm majority of men's not their dream girl. It's not the end of the world with that. But it takes a self-esteem to understand. Look, here's the thing. People who have high self-esteem attached to truths. They enjoy truths. Truth means something to them. People with low self-esteem see truths as threats and they see it as an insult. You have to really have an unwavering desire to be close to the truth because it's the only way to stay sane.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I'll mention it with Sadia. It's like, I think that women want what other women want. And so they're constantly looking at other women for cues as to what is the right way to be. And especially through the lens of social media, so many women are looking out at the highlight reels of their life and they're seeing women do everything. And so women want everything, not in a material sense, but in an emotional, relational, experiential sense. They want to have all of the experiences. They want to do all the things and have all the feels. And so if they see a woman over there, or multiple women in their highlight reels, having a kind of relationship that they've never felt, I think they get this sense of FOMO. They don't think, well, it's just because she's hot and I'm not, and I should just make peace with that. Like, I think that's going to be a very tough sell for the vast majority of women. They think, well, why not me? I want that too.
I think you can have that experience as long as you pick within your lane. You pick your level, you can have a wonderful relationship.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, you can honestly have a beautiful relationship.
But you might not have Michelin star dinners, you might not fly Emirates first class, you might, etc.
But I saw this singer on TikTok and he's going viral, he's doing really well, and he said that when I first met my wife now, I was living in my car, she came and stayed with me in my car and so on and so forth. And they are perfectly, now he's super successful. I forget his name, but he's fantastic. And they are perfectly matched in terms of looks. Perfectly matched. She's not some blonde like bombshell. He's not some Brad Pitt. They're just perfectly matched. And in psychology, we have a concept of the matching hypothesis. The most long-lasting, fulfilling relationships are when two people are matched on their level of attractiveness. The problem is unattractive people don't want to accept their match. They'll say things like, the guys I like they're just married or gone, or the ones that like me, I don't like them. Well, that's your level. If that's what's coming to you, that is your level.
Well, that's the entitlement that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And I think for men look at so much porn and they can pick out whoever their partner is. So these guys get used to having sexual stimulation from women that are so far out of their league.
You won't believe it. Like, I'll get guys in the middle of India being like, I'm madly in love with this blonde Russian woman and I know she wants me. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Sanjay, but it's very unlikely that this Tatiana is in love with you. Like, accept it. But they're like, I don't like Indian women. I'm like, but I'm so sorry. I'm a Pakistani woman. I know my appeal is limited. I don't have the same appeal as a Brazilian woman, and I never will. It's okay because I stick to who likes me. There'll always be somebody. But when you want the same appeal as people who you are not on the same level as, you'll always be set up for disappointment.
Well, I think what we're talking about, I call it the difference between hunting and fishing. Hunting is where you target one specific person. I want that man, I want that woman. And in general, it's only really attractive people who can do that with a high sense of success, a high rate of success. And I do think in general, women can hunt more successfully than men can, because even less attractive women, if they're going to be direct, can at least...
They get somewhere.
They can at least spin up a sexual relationship with a man. Men, I think the better strategy is to fish, in the sense, cast a wide net and haul in a catch. And among those that are interested in you, choose the best looking, most interesting morsels.
Yeah.
Like, start with what wants you.
Yeah.
And then choose the one that works.
And
That's a recipe for a really stable, satisfying relationship.
And I know it's harder the less attractive you are, but you're expecting people to limit what they're attracted to by selecting you, but you're not prepared to do that. So you just have to get so real with yourself in terms of your attractiveness, and there's nothing wrong with it. The realer you get, the easier it gets, because then you know what your market is, and you can select, and you can have a beautiful relationship.
And I also think that everyone can be more attractive than they currently
Everybody,
are. Like,
yeah.
there's
Especially
always
women.
something that you can do.
Yeah, women with the surgeries that are going out, I'm not suggesting that you should do that, but with the makeup even, and how you can present yourself in fast fashion makes everything like, this is cheap. Like, even this dress is cheap. You can get so much access to beauty more than ever before. And I think men as well. I think the only thing is that men suffer with is if they're significantly shorter than the average woman, then they suffer a little bit. And I don't always know what to tell them.
Isn't that interesting? It's like never been easier in the history of the world for a woman to be feminine, and yet we don't see that. Like, imagine the Wild West in the 19th century. How difficult it was, even, they didn't have indoor plumbing, like just to stay basic hygiene.
Yeah.
And they had these fancy dresses that they had to wash on the washboard, and cosmetics that had to come in on the stagecoach. And yet that was our template for femininity for that century. Now it's like you can get it delivered to your door for dollars, and it's never been easier to at least make that presentation. And maybe for some, that's exactly why it's no longer valuable anymore. Do you think that might be the case? Like, it's too easy to be feminine, and so it's not worth it anymore?
I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, but I guess it's just maybe how you've been raised. I think for some people, they always
Not
feel
dressing for the male gaze.
not dressing for the male gaze, seeing it as a negative thing to dress up for,
Yeah,
for men.
a lot of women do not necessarily dress for men. They're dressing for other women.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, they are, but
But
there's
it's not.
nothing
It's
wrong.
wrong to say that it's entirely for
Yeah,
women.
and also there's nothing wrong for dressing for men. You're a straight woman. Why wouldn't you want to dress for men? Well, like, what's wrong with doing that? I get that it's kind of a common thing. Like, we don't dress for men, we don't dress for men, we don't dress for men. But even if you did, is that the end of the world? You're single, you're trying to meet a man. What's
You're
wrong
gonna
with
get more
that?
men.
What's wrong with if you wanted to?
You don't see that in any other domain. Can you imagine, like, if you were trying to find a job, being like, well, I don't care what the employer is looking for.
I'm not getting my qualifications for my job. Then what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's a strange.
What do you guys think of Ozempic and testosterone?
You can start with that.
I actually equate Ozempic to the equivalent of like escorts, essentially.
Really?
Yeah, I
How
do.
so?
Just how we've been saturated by food in this culture, and it's so easy to eat, and it's become. We've now got Ozempic now, where you can eat as much as you want. You don't even have to learn the skills of being a healthy dieter. You don't have to learn how to work on yourself. You don't have to learn how to work out. You've got this magic pill, and you get access to the body that you've always wanted. I equate the same thing as escorts. Now you're saturated with sexuality and porn, and now you don't need to work on yourself. You don't need to worry about your insides. You've got access to exactly what you wanted. So I think, I don't want to judge, because at the end of the day, I don't know what it's like to be super overweight. And sometimes I have to be honest. I have said to our clients, do it. Do Ozempic if you want to do it. If you need to get your foot in the door, just absolutely do it. But the process of what you need to maintain a good body is really, really important. So I do recommend, if you're really overweight and you just can't get the weight off and it's really stopping your self-esteem, do the Mounjaro or Ozempic. But what I do notice is the more overweight a person is, the more afraid they are of Ozempic. They're like, oh, no, I don't want to mess up my insides. I'm like, but you messed up your outsides. Well, now what are you worried about? So I sometimes recommend it just to get them started, because sometimes willpower isn't enough. What was the other thing you mentioned? Ozempic and
Testosterone for men. It's like testosterone is the male equivalent of Ozempic for women.
I really worry for low testosterone men. I really, really worry for them, because women will only respond to testosterone, but so do other men. So without that, you really do suffer. I get that it's useful having those testosterone injections, but nothing is more useful and as a man than just being a man. Like, just be a man. And I know it's easier said than done, because the
What does
water.
that mean? Like, just saying to be a man is not something that we might know how to do anymore.
That's what I think is the real problem. I thought being a man was a given. You know what being a man is. Unfortunately, it's been hijacked, and they have no clue what being a man is. And I think maybe when
They've been taught by women for generations on how to be a man.
Yeah. So I think culturally they don't actually know what being a man is, and they think being a man is just being softer, kinder, more caring, rather than just being more essentially providing, protecting, and procreating.
Because all of the traits and characteristics of traditional masculinity have been deemed as toxic and morally reprehensible when they're presented in men for the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stoicism, that strength, that confidence, that will to power, that success, achievement. Like, that's great when it's in a woman. And it's like, you go, girl, boss bitch, queen. It's like, but when a man embraces those same qualities, it's scary.
But I blame men for them in that as well, because sometimes I meet men that hate their fathers, and I'm like, why did you hate your father so much? And it's like, oh, because he was not very emotionally available, and he didn't spend enough time with us, and he just used to work all the time. And so the qualities that make a man of a father, they resent them for. It's almost like they wanted two women to raise them. They wanted lesbian parenting. They wanted their mum and dad to act exactly the same. My mum used to hug me and kiss me. And
sometimes moms put a little bug in kids' ears. It's like, your dad thinks his job is more important than his family, and kids don't have the critical capacity to really examine that until much later. And
then they become on the receiving end when their kids are alienated against them. Then they start to realize what it was like. So this kind of anger towards masculinity is even in young boys. They're angry at their dad for kind of pushing them and telling them, look, right, you're going to fail if you don't work harder, or stop your stupid YouTube channel, go get a real job. I know it sounds negative, but a man's job is to be practical and be aggressive and be harsh on you so that you raise your own personal standards. Men seem to resent masculinity in other men these days.
When we talk about that, it's like it's the reason why those high T alpha characteristics of traditional masculinity are threatening is because you can't compete successfully. Low status men can't beat those men. Women can't beat those men in head-to-head competition. And women have entered into male-dominated spaces, and they're not going anywhere. They want to win. They want the work. They want the money. They want the fame. They want the attention. They want the status. They don't want to just be behind a good man and support him from the shadows and keeping a nice home for him while the kids are playing in the yard. Like, those days are gone, for better or for worse.
And I don't want them to misinterpret and think masculinity means being mean and harsh and stuff. It just means having that.
Sometimes it means that.
Sometimes it means that, but you combine it with warmth when you see good behavior.
Yeah.
It's simply just, if you're just too harsh and too masculine, you become avoidant and negative, and you can't build a relationship with that. It's more of a case of punish the bad and really reward the good. That's all. That's all it really kind of boils down to. But what men do is punish, just essentially just reward good and bad. They just stay too consistent with a woman. And you've got to really, really have a punishment for the bad and a reward for the good. And punishment for a woman doesn't mean aggression. It just means withdrawal. Withdrawal of if it's perks, if she's spending too much, it's like putting a limit on it. Or if she's going out too much, it's putting a limit on it. Or if she's disrespecting you too much, you start to think, I don't want to be here. You might withdraw yourself. So withdrawal rather than actively punishing.
What is the 3M method?
This is a program that I'm launching actually very soon. And here what I do is I teach men just 3 factors on how to have really healthy relationships. First one is mastering yourself. You can never have a healthy relationship without a healthy relationship with yourself. Without self-esteem and self-confidence, there is no point dating. Then you have to master women. Now, women speak a completely different language and men believe them. What they say they want and what they unconsciously reward are completely different. And the final thing is mastering relationships, where you understand communication, conflict resolution, how do relationships work. If you come out of a relationship and you had good memories, good years and beautiful kids, it's not a failure. If relationships, you're coming out of it with lowered self-esteem, broken homes, depression, anxiety, those are the failures. And that's where I come in with relationship skills.
What do you guys think of, Ryan's gotten in some hot water on our first video where you talked about leading with sex.
Do you mind refreshing that, and I'll say, yeah.
Well, sure. I've since crafted my language a little bit differently.
No, go full throttle. You're in good hands.
Well, I think it's actually better what
Okay.
I've adapted since then. So what I talk about is, for better or for worse, we live in a society in which sex precedes commitment. That's just the reality of the situation. So I think that, especially in an age where women can get in touch with almost every other man on the planet through social media. Like, they can hunt, they can target specific men. That the way to access certain men, especially otherwise inaccessible, high status, desirable men, is to offer a really compelling sexual opportunity, the richest, creamiest milk that you could possibly offer. That's my new language. Because this is sort of like the Trojan horse. It's if you offer a compelling, no strings attached, beautiful, interesting, fun sexual experience, it's going to be very hard for most men to say no to that. And they're going to open the door because it seems like it's a gift. There's no strings attached at all. You don't lead with commitment. You don't knock on the door and be like, hey, I was wondering if you could invite me in and make me your queen. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere that way. So you have to lead with something that the other person wants. That what makes them open their doors and they bring the Trojan horse in. Now, if you stop there and you are just an interesting...
Too many analogies. I liked your original version.
Interesting and compelling sexual encounter. If that's all you are, you might just get kicked out of the city in the morning. So you need to then find a way to stay. And that, in my experience, is finding a way to intricate yourself into the economy of that man's life. Like, find ways that you can be useful and valuable and slowly take on more and more of those responsibilities to the point where he kind of can't dispense with you anymore. Like, it would be painful or inconvenient to get rid of you because you do so much. You actually add value to his life. But if you lead with that, the doors stay closed, and if you don't move on to the second phase, you generally get evicted in the morning. So it's a two-pronged, two-phased siege, as it were.
And I understand, and I actually agree, because one thing I would say is when you work with the most successful men in the world, you'll find that their only criteria in women becomes their sexual promiscuity. How much?
They have everything else.
They have everything else. So the reason why I think it's slightly dangerous, though, from a man's perspective, to be that guy that just falls for great sex is, firstly, what happens when you meet a woman who gives you the best sexual experience of your life, what ends up happening is you stop your vetting process. You don't want to vet and understand her better. So you won't even ask, how come she's so great at sex and she's like 20 years younger than me? Or how come she has all these nudes on her phone already? Like, when was this? Where were you? Who were you sending this to? They don't care. They all see a video that's clearly before them and just want it. They all see that, you know, she's doing all these moves and wearing all these outfits, and they're not even thinking, how does she know all of this? They're just thinking, this is the best experience ever. Now, she's coming into this with more experience than you. Never, ever, ever a good sign, especially if a woman is more sexually aware than you. Never a good sign. Secondly, if you are successful, you don't need her to add value. You only need her to be good at sex. So the more successful you are and you lead with that, the more you have to risk, because essentially she will do nothing after that. After that, she will have no value to add to you because you outsource everything. So then what will happen is you've got this hyper promiscuous woman that you haven't vetted, who is doing the one and only job that you can't outsource. You are now madly in love, and she is now thinking, I've managed to get access to all this wealth and luxury and all this lifestyle because I knew how to suck a dick. This is the best and easiest job I've ever had. She's not going to stop there.
You said it, not mine.
Yeah, so she's not going to stop. So you are now left with a hyper promiscuous woman with zero value added to your life, who is in the habit of doing this, and you have a lot to risk and lose. So I think as a man, when you need lust. Yeah, there is no way a man can fall in love with a woman without lusting after her first. They need a fantastic, amazing sexual experience. They need lust. They need it to be the best that they can have ever accessed if they want to be sexually loyal to that woman. But the better way to do it is look at how her prior sexual experience. If it's not what you like, it's better to take a woman with all the great qualities that you need in a woman and teach her what you like and make her into the best sex than taking the best sex and trying to make her into a wife. It's better to take a wife and turn her into a whore than take a whore and turn her into a wife.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Sadia.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that, this strategy is not for men. It's for women.
Yes,
I'm
it's a
teaching
great
women
strategy.
how to get these sorts of
Absolutely.
men. And who gets pissed off when I say this?
The women.
The women.
Yeah.
The guy should be like, what the fuck, man? You're giving away our secrets.
And I've said it to many girls. I was like, if I want to teach a woman how to get the most successful man in the world, all you have to do is be amazing sexually. They will look for nothing else. Nothing else. You don't have to cook. You don't have to clean. You don't even have to be loyal. They won't even know because they're
You won't
always
even know
away.
there are other women on the planet.
They won't even know. So if this advice is for women, absolutely. And you'll see a lot of like women that are training other women how to use women. They focus on this. And this is why I would say Eastern European and Russian women have such a monopoly over successful men. It's because they know from day one, all you have to do is please a man sexually. You don't have to acknowledge his existence after that. And that's how they treat men. They're literally like, okay, are you useful? Yes. Okay, I'll sleep with you and it'll be the best you'll ever have. After that, don't expect anything else from me. Like, leave me alone, essentially, after that. And they have men on a chokehold with that attitude. Whereas you'll meet, let's say, Indian, Pakistani women who will cook, clean, know everything. But if they don't know how to, they won't be sexually loyal to that woman. So to get that strategy for a woman is a fantastic strategy. For a man, because I always think about things from the perspective of children, I know what happens when you get the wrong woman pregnant. Children suffer. And that's why I always train men to be more selective than I do women. Because women, if you choose a bad man, you'll have a beautiful kid. Hopefully you'll treat them well. If you choose a bad woman, you suffer. The children suffer.
So back to therapy again. Do you find therapy is actually helpful for your clients?
No, unless you're coming to me. I really would go as far as saying, unless you're coming to me, fire your therapist. And the reason I say that is I will have clients that come to me and say, I've been in therapy 8 years. I'm like,
That's
fire your therapist. Why on earth have you been in therapy for more than 3 months and 6 months at most? You should see a significant change. And if you don't see a significant, it doesn't mean like your whole life has to change. It's at least you know what you're doing wrong. And then you can make the decision to stay or leave in that relationship. But if you've been doing it for 8 years, 10 years, and you've gone through terrible relationships in that time, all of these things, then essentially your therapist hasn't understood what the problem is and hasn't told you the problem, and you are just paying her to be your friend. You need a therapist that firstly understands modern dating, really understands the modern dynamics of what's going on. So she's not going to just sit there and give you a bunch of love languages and attachment styles. She's going to tell you, look, I think that if she's going Miami on weekends with her friends, chances are she's not really ready for a commitment. But what traditional therapists will say is maybe she's an avoidant, she just needs a bit of space. They overcomplicate what are essentially facts. And so I don't think therapists actually understand that what's the crux of modern dating, so they can't help you in the correct way. And essentially people just use it to make themselves feel better, but it doesn't actually make them a better person. And how you can measure whether you've got a good therapist or not is the quality of your relationships. If you are still in toxic relationships, there's still toxicity, it's still bad. Just because you feel better doesn't mean the therapy is working. The quality of your relationships is a measurement of how great the therapist is going. Even if you're single, do your relationships get better? If they don't, then your therapist is not as helpful as you think.
I think therapy can be helpful, but on the whole, it is very limited in what it can accomplish. And I think we think that it's a panacea for all kinds of individual and social problems. I do think that therapy tends to lead with communication and understanding, that all
compassion.
problems and compassion, yeah, I could see that, that all relationship problems can be solved if we just learn to communicate better, to understand each other, and have more empathy for each other's perspectives. And that's bullshit. That's not true. Like, why don't we teach that to our world leaders? Like, is that what's going on between international relations? Is there's just not enough communication? There's not enough compassion? It's like, that's not what actually leads to improved relations between countries. It's not actually what leads to improved relations between individuals. I do think that it's okay to work with a therapist long term, provided that the problem that you initially came to see him or her has been resolved a long time ago. And you can kind of become like a sounding board or a confidant as opposed to a paid friend. Maybe they're similar, I'm just being semantic. And I've had some long-term relationships with that. The way I described my practice was it was therapeutic coaching. The idea here is let's define the problem, let's have actionable solutions. The progress is going to be made outside the sessions when you start to make different choices and act differently. And you shouldn't have to give this 3 months as a trial period. You should know that this is helping you from the very first session.
Yeah, very first.
And you should be moving in the direction of your objectives. And if not, there's an issue. And I think a big reason why some therapists aren't so solution-focused in this way is, one, there's this unwritten law in therapy that you're not ever supposed to be directive with your clients. Like the insight for action should always arise spontaneously within the client, and I think that's stupid.
That's not true.
And I think that if someone is doing something foolish or harmful or detrimental to their goals, it's my job to give my perspective on what they could do differently to avoid that.
Yeah, and I think that if your therapist leads with kindness, which is very nice, but that's what your friends are for. You're paying somebody to lead with truth.
That's what my friends are for. My friends aren't that kind.
And you're paying them. So sometimes they'll come to me in a session and they'll say to me, I got more in one session than like months of my therapist. And I said, because they weren't being truthful with you. And it's because you weren't truthful with them and they believed you. The better thing to do is that you get really aligned with the truth and you decide, look, because I personally, and I think you do as well, we do group calls as well, well with, and that really helps. For a lot of people, just having a community, having videos along with weekly calls, that really helps them. They get that community as well. And others prefer individual. But I would just say that first, the better thing to do when it comes to therapy is to be totally honest. And if you're coming because of your partner, and the partner refuses to come to therapy, your goal in therapy is just to realize whether or not you can accept them or let them go. But changing them is not going to happen, particularly if they're not on the call.
We were talking about this earlier before the recording. Another kind of dirty secret is that a lot of therapists are just terrible business people.
Myself included as well. To be fair, I'm not the best.
It's like, and there's kind of a conflict of interest in therapy. If the client actually gets better or solves their problem, they lose their income, their revenue. That's their livelihood. So I do think that sometimes there can be kind of a folie à deux between the client and the therapist to kind of keep things going in a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, that
so
makes
one
sense.
of the best ways for a therapist to actually help their clients and to tell them the truth is to have more work than they fucking know what to do with. It's like, I don't need any one client because I have a wait list of like 6 months. So let's solve your problem. It's okay if it only takes a session. It's okay if I never see you again. Please, it's not like there's an absence of people in the world who need help.
Yeah.
I really think both of you guys provide so much interesting and helpful, really like advice that you can't get from any normal therapist that you'd hire.
Yeah, and sometimes
On
people
YouTube.
try and shame us and be like, oh, you charge so much for a session, or oh my God, you only work with the 1%. We give so much advice for free.
For free.
We do so much of our job for free that you can access all day, every day, whenever you want, and not pay a penny.
If you guys were around doing these kind of videos when I was in my 20s, oh my God, my life would have been so different.
I can't believe how much I give for free. And yet they'll still say, can you give me a discount, or can we do this? And it's like, that's such an ingratitude. You don't do your job for me for free. I don't go to lawyers and expect them to do it for free. I give you a lot for free. And then you try and shame people who actually try and monetize the skill that you guys have been watching and revising and writing notes from all day, every day.
Sadia, did you always have this kind of insight and information in your mind?
I'm Muslim, and I think that's a big part of it. I think before I realized...
This is
that
just common knowledge where you
Yeah.
come from, all this stuff? Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
we
think
thought you were
so.
special.
No,
Oh,
honestly, I
okay.
think being Muslim is a really big part of it. And this is one of the reasons why I was telling the boys that I tend to get a big backlash from like non-Muslim women particularly. And they're just like, this is so backwards, and blah, blah. I know it sounds archaic. It sounds totally archaic when a man tells you, take that picture of you on a thong down from Instagram. It sounds totally archaic when a man says, okay, you're out at 4 a.m. and your ex-boyfriend is there, come home. I know it sounds archaic, but deep down, you respect men that have these archaic values. You respect that more than the man that says, actually, you know what, yeah, go sleep with that guy while I watch, or yeah, you know what, I don't mind you going to do whatever you want, I don't mind, do whatever you want. You feel loved more with these archaic values than you will with, and you respect men more when you have these archaic values. So I think the Muslim element works, and then having the psychological research all just seems to back it. I think I remember when I was like 16 years old, reading something from Buss, the evolutionary psychologist who kind of did all this research, and he found that women like protectors, men like this, and all the evolutionary stuff. And I was like, oh, men like to spread their seed, and they have like multiple wives or whatever. And I was like, yeah, but that's, of course, why do you need research for that? That's that's what Muslims do. And they like to be protective, and there's protective jealousy, and you should control. Their jealousy is not. And he said in an interview, he said, as an American, I was always told that being jealous is an sign of insecurity. You should never be jealous. It's a way to put women off. But his research showed that women actually like protective jealousy. They like for you to make sure that you don't give the other men access to her. That's your way of staying alpha. And I was like, well, duh, isn't that true? But I didn't realize that this wasn't commonplace until I went online.
Well, I like to not have to do that.
Yeah.
Just to your point earlier that it's better to take a wife and turn her into a whore than a whore and turn her into a wife, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I just don't select a woman who's going out until 4 a.m. to the clubs.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in getting into a power conflict? Just choose a woman who isn't interested in doing those
and I
things.
think that's the key difference between protective and insecure. Insecure men will choose really badly and almost beg her to change, but never walk away. Whereas protective men choose well. They might spot things that they don't like. They will tell her, and if she doesn't want to do it, no problem. They will just leave if they have to. So the willingness to walk away is what separates protectiveness from insecurity.
Very interesting. Both of you guys are fascinating. Great minds.
Thank you so much for having us.
This has
so
been
much-
great, Mark. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
much
you.
Been a long time coming. We've been talking for like years. This has been great.
Thank you so much for Mark for making it happen.
So much great advice. All right, you guys.
Take care.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Bye.
What is the 3M method?
This is a program that I'm launching actually very soon. And here what I do is I teach men just 3 factors on how to have really healthy relationships. First one is mastering yourself. You can never have a healthy relationship without a healthy relationship with yourself. Without self-esteem and self-confidence, there is no point dating. Then you have to master women. Now, women speak a completely different language and men believe them. What they say they want and what they unconsciously reward are completely different. And the final thing is mastering relationships, where you understand communication, conflict resolution, how do relationships work. If you come out of a relationship and you had good memories, good years and beautiful kids, it's not a failure. If relationships, you're coming out of it with lowered self-esteem, broken homes, depression, anxiety, those are the failures. And that's where I come in with relationship skills.